Hey guys, what's up? For this episode of Flick City, this is Flick City episode 92. Eric Holmes has 3 interviews. 2 of them are for this new movie called Walden. It's on digital and on demand as we speak, as of this week, the week of December 15th, 2023. The other interview is an interview with Rick Korn, the filmmaker behind a documentary called A Father's Promise. I'm a week late in doing this. The doc came out in theaters December 8th, and I looked on its Instagram page. So December 8th through the 13th, that was when the screenings are for A Father's Promise. We'll get to that in a second. But for Walden and as well as A Father's Promise, there are official websites where you can go to for further information. Maybe A Father's Promise will be screening in your neck of the woods down the road, or just check on that website when it hits streaming or on digital and on demand like Walden. Okay, so for the first 2 interviews, Walden, Eric Holmes interviews Tania Raymonde, and she plays a detective in this movie in Walden. And the second person he interviews is David Keith. He plays the judge in Walden. That movie is about a stenographer, the titular Walden Dean, played by Emile Hirsch. And Walden lives in a small town, is somewhere in the South, and he lives not a lonely life, but a sort of a solitary life. He's basically focused on getting some kind of stenography world record, and he tries, I think it seems like every week, to break this stenography speed record. And that's in one of those contests he meets his possible love interest, played by Kelly Gardner. That's one of the elements of Walden. But the main crux of Walden has our hero, or maybe anti-hero, taking justice into his own hands after being so frustrated at seeing so many criminals walk past the courtroom where he works, and there's no justice served for some of these criminals. So David Keith plays the judge and sort of a father figure to Walden Dean. Eric Holmes interviews David Keith. You might, if that name seems familiar, he was in An Officer and a Gentleman. He was in Wide of the Eye, The Two Jakes. For the purposes of the interview, Eric asks about his directing feature, The Curse, and he also mentions the time he played Elvis Presley in this movie called Heartbreak Hotel, which stars Charlie Schlater, and I believe it's directed by Chris Columbus. So it's only about a 5 or 6 minute interview, but it's interesting enough to check it out. He also talks about his work with Gene Hackman in Behind the Enemy Lines. So that is the second interview that I will put on this episode. The first interview is with Tania Raymonde, so check that out as well. And you might know her from Lost, from her work in Goliath, and she's a very interesting person as well. And she has a really cool mention regarding Tremors, and yeah, she loves Tremors. That's one of her all-time favorite movies. So first Tania Raymonde, then David Keith, both of them for Walden. Finally, Eric interviews Rick Korn, the director behind A Father's Promise, and it centers on musician Mark Barden, whose life is tragically changed after he lost his son Daniel. Daniel was murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary. Through the loss, Mark is understandably focused on finding a way to make a difference in helping prevent gun violence. So, quote, as the plot summary goes, so, quote, that no one else must go through what he and his family went through. The documentary features performances and interviews with Susan Tedeschi, Derek Trucks, Karen Fairchild of Little Big Town, Daryl DMC McDaniels, and more. Father's Promise, it's executive produced by Sheryl Crow. There was a lot of coverage about this documentary about a week ago, and hopefully it'll survive it'll definitely survive past its December 8th through 13th screening dates. Check on its official website, which I will have on the show notes for you to check out if it's playing in your neck of the woods, or maybe they'll make some kind of an announcement when it hits streaming. All right, so that is the 3 interviews for this CinemAddicts episode, of this Flick City episode of number 92. First 2 is Tania Raymonde, David Keith, and finally Rick Korn. The movies are Walden and the documentary A Father's Promise. Take care, guys. Talk to you soon. Thanks for supporting me, Eric, Bruce, and yes, Anderson on this podcast we call CinemAddicts. Take care. Bye.
Yeah, I'm here with Tania Raymonde, the actor in a movie called Walden. I guess you would call it a thriller. It didn't seem that way at first because I wasn't quite sure what I was getting into going in. But then the movie it was like, oh, cool, it's a movie about a stenographer. This will be interesting. Then it takes a turn and becomes something completely different. What brought you onto this project?
Well, the casting director, Shannon McCann, had sent me the script and told me a little bit about the actors that would be in it. And I was a huge fan of Emil's just because of his body of work. And I loved the idea because first of all, I knew nothing about stenographers, really never paid attention, and had no idea kind of like how psychologically like taxing that job was. And I just thought it was a really funny idea for like a bloody revenge thriller. So I was down as soon as I read the script. I thought I had a good tone and I wanted to be involved.
A lot of your scenes are mostly with Shane West, but you have actors like Emil Hirsch, and I didn't know who Luke Davis was before this movie, but holy crap, he was great in this.
He's creepy. Just like
when you're around a bunch of actors, whether in this or you've done a lot of TV as well, does that just kind of help everyone just kind of level up their game just to kind of rise above each other? Or how does that working in the group like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's one of the most fun parts of being on a movie is that you're part of a bigger team. You know, it's like one big family. What's interesting is like when you play a cop, like most of the time you're going to have a partner. And Shane and I had never met until the first day that we shot. So we had to try to kind of create like a dynamic of cops that know each other for a long time. Plus he's like from the South. So he's used to like small town kind of living. He knows what it's like. And for me, that's like super foreign because I'm from LA and I grew up in LA. So it was a really nice dynamic for the two of us. And we played really well off of each other, you know, and it's fun to have a partner as a cop on set because it's like having like a friend in life, you know? And in regards to like just watching the other actors performing, like, it's funny, you're part of an ensemble, but sometimes you don't act with everybody, you know? And it was just great watching Emil and Kelly Garner just working on their scenes because that's almost like a whole other movie than the one we were in. So it was pretty cool seeing it all pieced together.
Obviously, I'm not an actor, but I imagine you do TV, you're playing a character for an X amount of time. You have time to kind of live that character and kind of develop that character over a long period of time, whereas a movie, you get the script, maybe you get a couple read-throughs and you're off to the races. You don't really have time to do that. What's some of the positives and negatives between working in TV where you have time to build that character and movies where you just got to go and just go for it?
Well, movies, yeah, most especially indie movies, you know, you're usually shooting very quickly and movies tend to come together kind of at the last second. Like the cast says yes and the script is put together and production goes and you go and you start shooting. I'm kind of, you know, it's just not, you don't have the luxury of time that you do like on TV. TV is way more slow going. So like something like Goliath that I worked on for like 4 seasons, which was like a total of 5.5, almost 6 years, you know, you kind of live in the skin of the character way longer and it almost feels like real life. You know, this is almost a different kind of experiment in acting in that it's just so fast and you have to make like quick connections immediately because you've only got 2 weeks and once it's done and you'll see the movie in a year and, you know, good luck. I don't really have a preference. It kind of just depends on the project. This project surprised me though because I couldn't really see the quirkiness and weirdness of it sort of on the page, if that makes sense. Like when I was reading the script, it sort of felt more like a classic standard thriller. And what I was watching as we were shooting was like how kind of different and weirder it kind of was. And like that has a lot to do with Emil's performance and kind of how he decided to play the character. And I found that kind of like super cool and interesting. So it's nice to have surprises, you know, when you show up on set.
Yeah, a lot of the characters have their own quirk. Emil is the obvious one in there. But then you gotta write that line because like if he goes just like a little too much more, then it becomes like, all right, pump the brakes a bit, but like you wrote that line perfect.
You have to trust yourself as an actor too, because like I mean that's the crazy thing about acting. You have to give yourself up to it completely. You don't really know 100% if it's like going to work or if it's going to be ridiculous or you know if it's going to make sense in the movie. You just have to go and try and trust. I mean that's just your job, you know.
When you like past parts when you were to experiment like that. How much of that comes with preparation, like trying out your character? How much of that is just you trusting the director to just give you honest notes or like, and maybe other actors, like giving feedback to each other, like how much of that do you rely on? And when do you listen to them and go, yeah, that's a great idea. I should probably do this or that, or I appreciate it, but I got this. And
it's really, honestly, like you described it really well. It's like a total combination of all things. So you're kind of like pulling from every angle. So you have an idea of sort of what you think the character is going to be. You want to prepare as well as you can. But then when you get to set, everything sort of changes. So like you're no longer kind of thinking about it in your head. You're in this tiny town. So we shot in Conyers, Georgia, and then we went to Madison. And these look like picture book, towns from the South. And that kind of changes the way that you act right away because you hear these really pretty Southern accents everywhere. And, it's like real small town living. That kind of just shapes you already immediately. And then you've got the actors around you that are doing their own thing, especially in terms of like being a cop with a partner. It isn't really just about you. It's actually just kind of about how the cops play off of one another. So all I really cared about was responding to what Shane was doing, which was cool. And then on top of it all, you've got the director who's sort of like the master puppeteer of the whole thing that's kind of overlooking it all, saying, try this, do this different, go ahead, improvise if you want. And Mick was very open. Mick Davis, the director, he's kind of a rock star and was sort of like very open to us trying things and improvising when we wanted to and going really hard and pulling back. It's kind of, that's the best case scenario when all of those little elements work at the same time,
Well, speaking of directing, you've done some directing and writing yourself.
Yeah.
I did get to watch your short, looks like a music video for Without You, which I really liked.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
I looked high and low for Bad Art and I could not find it. Is that available anywhere?
Hopefully it will be one day. There were like some issues with the release of that, but like I'm hoping that when all is said it's done, it'll be available somewhere somehow. But it does exist, and it was an awesome experience. But I love directing and I love actors, and I feel like it's a huge privilege to have been acting for so long, to be able to sort of understand like all the weird shit that goes on in an actor's head. That really helps as a director. At least I know what that feels like. It can kind of try and find a way to sort of relate my experience like to other actors when I'm directing, and it's a different skill, obviously, but it's funny, actors, you learn a lot on set because most of the time when you're not acting, you're just sitting around waiting for stuff to happen. So you're just sitting on set watching people make a movie, and all you got to do is sit there and watch. Obviously it's more complicated than that, but the basics are there, and you're on set all the time. You have like a front row seat to like how a movie is made. If you do it for long enough, it kind of gives you the main points of how to try and do it yourself, which is cool,
Yeah. Is directing and writing something you want to do more of in the future, or are you just like locked into acting?
No, sir. I mean, like, I really don't separate one from the other, but like, certainly I think it's like, it opens up a whole new realm of possibility. I love telling stories. I love writing. I have a lot of cool ideas, and the really fun part also about being on the production side too, when you're acting, and dude, don't get me wrong, I actually think acting is like one of the most hardest professions on planet Earth, honestly, because it's just one of those weird skills that you can't really teach. It's like either you have it or you don't. But from producing side and directing, you get to be involved in every little part of the movie up until the moment when you shoot the movie. As an actor, you kind of just show up at the last second and do your thing and leave. You haven't been around for like all the steps leading up to the production. And so all that kind of stuff is really exciting and cool for an actor to see, and I really like that.
I do have a kind of a weird question, but you're an actor, so maybe you can answer this. I don't know what everyone in Walden, I don't know what everyone's acting method is, but just like method acting in general, I think the most famous example I can think of is like Jared Leto playing the Joker. He would like send like used condoms and dead rats to his co-stars. And do you really need to do that? Do you really need to do that to get into the character, or is that just an excuse to be an a-hole to your co-stars? And how come you never hear of method actors like playing an altruistic character that just gave away a bunch of money to homeless people or something like that?
Yeah, you're right. That would be really nice. And like not tell anybody about it ever. Yeah. And then that just be their process. I think like, look, it's like if everybody's game, that's cool. Like if you have a rat phobia and your co-star sends you a rat in a box, like maybe that's not cool. I don't know if I'd send somebody condoms or something, but to be honest, like if your other actors are down and you're all on the same wavelength of craziness, then you can kind of do whatever you want. It's all just part of the fun of pretending to be somebody else and putting yourself in the mind space. I think that's what those actors mean by that or what they're trying to do. It's when you're playing really out there balls to the wall characters too, it's hard to stay in that state of mind. I mean, look at like someone like Heath Ledger, like what he went through mentally to play the Joker on his movie and how it kind of drove him nuts and everything that led to him dying. And look, I don't know if it's connected, but obviously I know that you kind of have to torture yourself a little bit to get to those levels, especially for great performances like that. So it is also all fun and games. If your co-stars are down, yeah, send them a rat in a box. Why not?
All right. Well, it's in the mail. So
all right, sweet. Thank you. But, I need a third pet.
But I'll end with this. We got a what's in the box segment. And in the box, we have people put movies in the box. These are movies that either movies that are really personal to people or movies that they're like, this one's really good and no one ever talks about it. I wish someone would talk about it. What's a movie you would like to put in the box?
Oh, man, like an unknown thing that people haven't seen necessarily, maybe?
Doesn't have to be. It can't. Some people do. Some people do like just unknown movies that no one talks about. Some people do movies that like someone had Amazing Spider-Man 2. It was just a movie people crapped on, but they really liked and thought that people should kind of reconsider it. It's your movie, so whatever you want to put in. I'm trying to think of like something serious or something silly. I just watched Tremors again, and I think it's a masterpiece. I would agree with you.
I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, and I forgot how terrifying it was. And when I was 12 years old, I worked on my first movie ever as a little kid, and the director of photography of that, this very nice man, was also shot Tremors. And I remember him explaining Tremors to me. And then 2 days later in my hotel room alone at 12, I watched it and I was terrified. And so I just watched it again since then. It had been like so many years, and it's a perfect movie. I highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't yet seen it.
Do you prefer horror or comedy or drama over any of the others? Or
I think I really love good horror. Like a great horror is like unparalleled. I just think it's so hard to make a really good horror movie. It's really tough. And there's so much out there, and I don't scare super easily. So it depends. I mean, I guess the bar is a bit high, but I mean, really well-constructed horror I love. Otherwise, I'll really watch anything. I'm a fan of comedy too.
Yeah. It seems that horror would be the fun one, which is weird because comedies exist. So you would think
it would be fun to direct a horror movie. Yeah. I think that'd be an interesting challenge because all the stuff that I've done so far, music videos, the movie, the stuff that I'm writing now, none of it is horror really. So I'd be very curious to see what it's like to try and write a good horror. It's a big challenge.
Yeah. Well, Tania, thanks for joining me. And for everyone, Walden is on demand and digital December 12th. And hope it does well because it was a pretty good thriller. And congratulations.
Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate it.
I'm here with David Keith, star of the movie Walden, Judge Boyle. When I was talking with Tania, it just seemed like a drama piece about a stenographer and then takes a turn. And then I'm looking up kind of your history, and you've worked with Protect to help protect children of child abuse, which kind of fits in with kind of where Walden goes. Did any of that come into play when reading the script or being brought onto this project?
Not because, no, the script was already written, but when I read it, I went, oh yeah, this is about my cause in life. I no longer am active with Protect, but for 10 years, we lobbied for stricter laws on child molesters and child protection legislation all over the country and in Washington. And I just think an adult who hurts a child for their own satisfaction is the worst form of evil on the planet. It's always just that I just decided that was going to be my target in my give back. Yeah. So when I read this, I went, okay, this is about some pretty serious stuff.
Well, it's a noble cause. I'm glad to see you kind of took action even in the past, which is, more than I've done. So thank you for that.
You got time? You still have time?
Yeah. Well, but I guess get into some acting stuff because you've been acting a lot. In fact, I looked up one of your earlier jobs was you have a stunt credit for Terror Circus.
That's an incorrect credit, and I've never been able to get that taken off.
Why do you suppose that's on there? Is there another?
No clue.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. So no stunts, but is the directing credits correct? Because I did see the curse, and I did like the curse quite a bit.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I made that for $600,000. Yes, I directed that, and I directed The Further Adventures of Tennessee Buck. Yep, those are correct.
I saw the trailer for that, and I was like, I got to see this. This looks like so up my alley. But with the Curse you've worked, was Lucio Fulci was one of the producers on that?
Man, we're talking about 1986. I'm not sure that I can remember all the names that were involved back then. We had an Italian producer. We had an Israeli film company in LA, and it was people were all over the place. We shot half the movie on my farm in Tennessee, and the other half in a studio in Rome, Italy.
Oh, that's fun. Well, I guess just kind of talking about acting. When I was talking with Tania, we talked about like kind of when you get to work with a bunch of great actors, it kind of helps you level up to kind of bring everyone up at their top game. What's kind of your thoughts on that as far as acting goes and just working with people in general?
Oh, it's always great when you're in there with somebody who has a deep well of ability. I'll give you a case in point. I did a movie called Behind Enemy Lines, and the 3 hours that I spent shooting that one scene where Gene Hackman and I kind of go head to head was to this day the greatest 3 hours that I've ever spent as an actor. He is absolutely fathomless when it comes to digging deep and going, the deeper the emotion that I would get into, he would go it was just wonderful. It was a joy.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Gene Hackman, but I'm not an actor, but I've always heard that he's like one of the best ones. But what's something that he does that you as an actor would pick up that me as a layperson probably wouldn't?
Not sure how to answer that question. I mean, this is a conversation I had with Emil, because Emil is one of those actors that, when you get the line right, when you really know you delivered a line properly, it's like the ringing of a tuning fork. It's like it rung, it's like, dong, it. And Emil said he felt the same thing. And I think that's something that maybe lay people don't, I call them civilians. Maybe civilians are not privy to, but I've used it all my life. I know when the tuning fork rings and I've said the line right. And I generally say, on that take, I think I really got that right. So that's my favorite, delivery.
So kind of like one of those, it when you see it sort of things.
Well, you know it when you feel it.
Yeah. And actually, you're working with Emil Hirsch on Degenerate coming out.
That's right. Yeah, we've finished the film, but we're in post-production on it now. And yeah, it was great. Great working with him twice in a row.
I guess I'll just go with, we have a What's in the Box segment. And in this segment, we have people put in movies that they really like, that they think are underseen. What's a movie that you like, that you're like, that was really good, I wish more people would see that?
A movie that I was in, or any movie?
Actually, both, because you've had quite a good career. I'd like to get one that you were in, movie, then one that you like that you've seen.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to give more thought to a movie I like that I wish had more attention, but of my movies, Heartbreak Hotel, where I played Elvis and sung a lot of the music myself, sung a lot of the songs myself. That's kind of a sleeper film that I was in that I would wish more people would see.
All right. Walden is on demand and on digital December 12th. And this was a really good movie. Yeah, congratulations on another banger.
Thanks, man.
How you doing, Eric?
Oh, not bad. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Back in New York.
Sweet. Well, I'm here with Rick Korn, the writer-director of the documentary A Father's Promise. I also just recently watched your other documentary about Harry Chapin, When in Doubt, Do Something. Both documentaries have a lot in common in that kind of on the surface, they're music docs, but they go a lot deeper. With Harry Chapin, it's about him wanting to, he has his own political aspirations of hunger. And Father's Promise, you have Mark Barden, who had a horrible tragedy with his son dying at Sandy Hook and wanted to go about that. I guess what's your ambition? Your interests in documentaries seem to align with music and how it can be. Yeah, we all know that music is joyful, but it can also affect change in certain ways and bring people together. What's your ambitions and interests as far as that goes?
Well, you nailed it. There are some. It's great. It's funny that you say that because there are real similarities between Harry and Mark. Harry being that artist activist, and Mark getting back to his music. Trying to find that balance between what he does at Sandy Hook Promise and what he calls his real self, and the music. But I'm glad you mentioned the similarities. In fact, so did the Chapins feel that way, and they've been to a number of our docu-concerts that we've done with Mark, and we have an award that we're giving away, 3 awards that we're giving away, called the Chapin Cragen Belafonte Humanitarian Award. After Harry Chapin and Ken Cragen, who's the great manager who pulled together We Are the World and Hands Across America, and Harry Belafonte, who was the great artist activist. There are similarities between all three. That was really perceptive.
A lot of what Mark has done has been trying to do what he can to stop school shootings, whether through gun laws or letting people know about school shootings and what can be done to prevent those well beyond. Because, I mean, not going to lie, gun laws are an uphill battle, obviously, but there's got to be other ways to go about that. And they seem to kind of lean in on those as well.
I think Mark says it best in the film, and we were talking about it earlier today, that, it takes a long time for Washington to act. When we interviewed Senator Chris Murphy, he made that point very, very clear. They move very slowly in Congress. And Mark said, I think Mark's stance at the point that the background check bill failed in 2013, he said, we've got to do this ourselves. So let Washington be Washington. It's going to take time. But there are things that we can do as individuals, not just as artists or filmmakers, that can help prevent gun violence in our communities. Things like volunteering. And it doesn't mean that necessarily that you have to volunteer for a gun violence prevention organization, but you can volunteer for an after-school music program or a sports program that keeps kids out of gangs and off the streets and safe and fed. And so, our focus with this film and what we're doing with Artists for Action and what Mark's focus is with Sandy Hook Promise is, there are things we can do, and they've created these programs that are in all 50 states. And that is pretty amazing. They're making progress that way and letting Washington be Washington.
What do you think with the Harry Chapin documentary, and maybe hopefully what this documentary can bring forth? Like, what's some success you've had with the Harry Chapin documentary that's kind of shed light on his hunger issue? And with that, what do you kind of hope that maybe similar or hopefully more, because hunger is bad, but school shootings are unfortunately very prevalent. What are some I guess what's the idealistic hope that this documentary can bring forth?
Well, with the Harry documentary, Harry had started in 1975. He had started Why Hunger, which is a very big organization now, and they have a lot of media coverage. They do their Hungerthon every year, which is on Sirius radios and other radio stations around the country. So they get a lot of media, which was the point that when Harry and Bill Ayers started Why Hunger, it was really going to be more of a media organization to get out there and let people know that there are things they can do about hunger. In our particular case, we're starting at that same point where, we're hoping that this documentary will enable people to do something about gun violence, point them in the right direction. We have 3 things. We've got, number 1, volunteer. Number 2, if you can, donate. And number 3, vote. Voting is really, really important because that's what's holding up some of these common sense gun laws, because you've got, way too many politicians that are, getting money from the NRA And, that movement has a lot of money to it. What we're trying to do is match and surpass that movement with a movement for, gun violence prevention.
Has there been any? Oh, has there been any thought to? I would say raising security in schools, but I think honestly having any security in schools, because you don't see, like, for instance, you don't hear of mass shootings at a courthouse, and you don't hear of mass shooting at any number of places, and these places, what they have in common is they have security, as opposed to schools. Or even here in Colorado, it was years ago, we had that shooting at the Batman movie, and their response to that was put a sticker on the front that said, "Don't bring guns in." I'm like, I think you can do a little better than that.
Yeah. Well, there's two things. One, schools and other places like movie theaters and bowling rinks and so forth. It's hard to put metal detectors in every place. It's very expensive. But what can be done is preventing these tragedies from happening in the first place, right? Yeah. And that's Sandy Hook Promise's focus. And we're leaning into that, because if you take the Lewiston, Maine shooting that happened a couple of weeks ago, that horrible shooting, that could be the poster child for preventing gun violence, because they had that guy every which way. His Army Reserve unit warned, his family warned, his place of employment warned, but they had a law called the yellow, I forget what they call it, but the yellow gun law, that was just just a caution, but not, hey, this guy could do something here. Let's make sure that he doesn't get his hands on guns, and let's make sure he gets the help that he or she needs. It's mostly men. He needs to, make sure that it doesn't happen.
Yeah. And even that, I figure, would be kind of difficult, just because it's like a Minority Report thing. Like people show the signs, but you can't arrest them for something they haven't done yet. And so that gets quite difficult, I would imagine.
Well, you don't need to arrest them, but you need to prevent them from buying a gun.
Yes.
Or if they have a gun, make sure it's taken out of the household safely. And that, just with a friend of mine whose son-in-law was acting erratic, kind of bipolar, and he has a gun in the house. So they made sure they got the gun out of that. Yeah. And so those kinds of things, not arrest them, but you get them the help that they need, but make sure that firearm is nowhere near him or children, or
maybe even take see something like this, and maybe take a closer look at your friends and family. Like, hey, Jimmy, why don't you let me take that gun from you? You're kind of, and in fact, let me see if I can get you some help, because I don't want to see you on the news.
Exactly. And there are laws that are on the books. I know they have it in California, they have it in Connecticut, they have it in New York, and a variety of states, where if someone is showing signs of any of these signs and there's a gun in the household, you can get a restraining order, and the police will come and take the gun away. So there are those kinds of laws on the book.
Well, we'll go with something a little funner than gun violence. But we have a What's in the Box segment. And in the box, we have people put in movies that they really like, or that they think are underseen. It's like, that movie's really good, no one talks about it, I wish they would. I'd like to have you put one of those movies in the box. And also, given this movie and your Harry Chapin, what's a documentary that would go good with would make a good triple feature with this and the Harry Chapin documentary?
Well, that's a great question. I think there's been some great documentaries out there that are music-oriented documentaries that you can also learn from. And I don't think there's another gun violence prevention documentary, even though they're out there, that would pair well with this, because we went out of our way to make sure our documentary wasn't that. For me, another documentary that I did and worked on was Hank Aaron Chasing the Dream, which was, I think it would pair great with this, even though it's not music. But it's about Aaron's civil rights life while he was approaching Babe Ruth's home run record, and there were threats against his life if he hit, Babe Ruth match Babe Ruth's home run record. And that's a great documentary because you see someone who's a professional athlete and they're stepping outside of themselves because they're really concerned about, in this case, racial injustice and so forth. And he teamed up with Martin Luther King. So I think that would be the perfect pairing. Not because I was part of that production team, but just because I think it fits what we like doing. I'm not looking to do it, just a fluffy documentary. I'm looking to do something with substance and music. Yeah. And, but I would say Hank Aaron, Chasing the Dream.
Yeah, the fluffy documentaries definitely have their place because especially after watching something like this, is like, I just need to watch something pop.
Oh, I love, by the way, I love, the fluffy documentaries. I watch them all the time. Every weekend I'm watching documentaries like that to kind of get out of that head. But one of the things that we tried to do with this film is, if you notice, we after the first 5 or 6 minutes of the film, we don't bring up that day, December 14th, 2012 at all. We go on with Mark's life and his journey and then his rediscovery of music. And, so we hope to leave people with a sense of hope, inspiration and hope. And that's really my goal, which I think separates us from, not knocking the other gun violence prevention films because they're great, but we wanted to make something where, people felt good after the film and not sad. We leave them with Cheryl's song and it gives hope.
Yeah, it's really good. I enjoyed it, I guess is a weird way to say it, but I appreciated it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And you have the world premiere of this on this Friday, December 8th, as we're recording this. And it looks like you have a concert to go along with it, which is amazing because with music docs like this, I'm like, why don't you do like the bands are right there. It makes sense. And it looks like you're doing that on December 7th.
Yeah, the day before. We everything I do, even with the Harry film, we like doing what I call docu-concerts. Which are concerts to tell a story. So on Thursday, I know you're in Colorado, you can't come, but we'll send you a tape of it. What we like to do is to create concerts to tell a story, and not depressing stuff, uplifting stuff. And it also gives me the chance to use some footage that we didn't use in the film. That is great footage, but it gets cut because it doesn't work, or for one reason, or we're trying to get down to 98 minutes. So it gives me the ability to do that. And they're all uplifting pieces. They're poignant, but uplifting. And so we'll do a video, then 3 songs, and the songs relate to the video that you just saw. Then we do a video, 3 songs, so on and so forth. Until this week, we get to, after that last video of the show, we have 8 songs in a row with, between Mark, his daughter, Natalie, and Peter Frampton and Sheryl Crow.
Rick, thank you for joining me today, and I wish you great success with this documentary. And anyone, obviously the whole gun control debate is, polarizing sides, but I think even with people that are against gun control for reasons that, okay, whatever, but there's a bunch of great music in this. So maybe they can just watch it for the great music, and hopefully seed will be drilled in their head and something will grow from that.
That's what we hope for. Cool. Eric, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
And, let us know if you need anything else from us.
Oh, yeah. I definitely would love to see any video for that show on Thursday. Wish I could go to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we'll send that to you for sure.
All right. Well, thank you, Rick.
All right, Eric. Thank you.